This morning we'll be reading from Joshua chapter 3. Joshua chapter 3, starting in verse 1. And the word of the Lord reads, Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Shittim, and they came to the Jordan, he and all the people of Israel, and lodged there before they passed over. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, As soon as you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priests, then you shall set out from your place and follow it. Yet there shall be a distance between you and it, about 2,000 cubits in length. Do not come near it, in order that you may know the way you shall go, for you have not passed this way before. Then Joshua said to the people, Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Let's pause there for just a moment and make sure we're understanding exactly what is going on. We would understand that the time frame of this chapter puts us in the month of April. It's time for that harvest snow to be melting off. The semi-solid, cold, frozen substance becomes a liquid. Runoff. Coming down from Mount Hermon. Having nowhere else to go, it runs to the Jordan. You can imagine what the Jordan River does, taking in all that extra fluid. It, of course, overflows its banks. It is flood season. It's deep and it's swollen. But God has called the children of Israel to cross it and take what is theirs. The first necessary item is to move from where they are in Shittim and camp out next to the Jordan. Across from Jericho. The distance would be roughly 10 miles. Joshua calls his leaders to get the people to march on out. Now, I don't know about you, but I've always believed nothing good happens early in the morning. But there's a purpose. There's a plan that must be executed. Now, we don't think about going 10 miles as much of a big deal. We jump into our super-powered machines. We flip a key in 10 minutes. Well, on a bad day. 10 miles on Midlothian Turnpike takes what? On a bad day, 20 minutes? Well, unless you have that whatever happened Thursday. And it shuts everything down, and then it takes 45 minutes or an hour and a half. But that's still nothing compared with walking. Walking in wet muck. That's the best and most astute technical term for it. When the ground is just enough that when you step on it and you pull your foot up, you get that wonderful sound. Makes everything just a little bit harder, a little bit more tiring. Joshua has them moving this 10 miles, probably took them the better part of the day. And they're camping out, prepared to cross over a swollen and flooded Jordan River. He gives them just a few other bits of information that is necessary. He tells his leaders to tell the people that when they see the Ark of the Covenant going out, they should follow it. All right, that works. Great, wonderful. This contraption comes out, we follow it. I like it. The Ark of the Covenant meant so much more, though, than just a thing. You see, those people saw it as the actual presence of God. Now, it wasn't a huge structure. It's only about 27 inches wide, about 27 inches deep, and about 40 inches long. Inside it was some of the most holiest of items. On top of it, on the cover, sat two cherubim facing one another, and in between it a seat. But it wasn't a seat for just anybody. You see, that was where they felt God rested. And rested in terms of hung out, not tired and beaten down. So when we're talking about the Ark of the Covenant, we're talking about more than just moving a box. Joshua is saying God is going to go before us, and as you see God pass by, get in line and follow. Would make sense, wouldn't it? But that's not all. He encourages them. Well, actually, first he tells them, but don't get too close. Stay back about 2,000 cubits. Now, do we have any scale and measure experts amongst us that could tell us exactly what a cubit would be? I didn't think so. Glad I did the research. We're talking about roughly 1,000 yards. Joshua is commanding them to stay away about 1,000 yards. Now, for sports enthusiasts, that's 10 football fields away. Why? Because just as we had sung earlier, God is holy, holy, holy. And we aren't. He also gives them another indication. He says, we want you to keep this distance, partially so everyone can see it, because you are to follow it, and you have not been this way before. Anyone ever gone somewhere they had never been before? Of course. How do you feel going there? Anxious. I like that term, anxious. I am extremely anxious. Why? Because I've told you before, I'm not real good with directions. So if I've never been there before, and if truth be told, even if I've been there 2 or 3 times, there is never a guarantee I'm going to arrive where I want to arrive. But God's going before them. They shouldn't have that problem. Point taken. I get that. Have you ever gone somewhere you have never been in bad weather? There's the story that I've heard numerous times of a fog setting in late at night, and it got so thick you could barely see in front of you, and a husband and wife were attempting to get somewhere, and they really didn't know where they were or where they were going, and they couldn't see any road signs. So the husband did what he thought was most feasible. He followed the red taillights of the car in front of him. And they just kept driving and driving until eventually the lights went out and they heard a bang. And it seemed the husband had driven into the garage door of the car that was in front of them. Why? He had gotten close enough, but he was distracted, and there was enough going around that he didn't see clearly. Joshua is trying to remove that from the children of Israel. Because, sometimes when we get so close, we get lost in crowds. We get confused. We become a little anxious. We're going to give a little bit of space. We're going to follow the priests as they move the Ark of the Covenant forward, and all shall be fine. Oh yes, but one other additional word of warning. Starting right now tonight, consecrate yourselves. Isn't that a wonderful churchy term? Out of curiosity, when was the last time you used the word consecrate outside of church? Anyone use it this week? Yeah, I didn't think so. What does that mean? Joshua is telling his people, prepare yourselves. You are going to be in the presence of God, and God is going to do something that you cannot even imagine. Be ready. It has the understanding of becoming ceremonially clean. It's not just, make sure you're up early, make sure you're bright awake, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, make sure you have on your hiking boots. It's more than that. Make sure you're spiritually ready to handle following so near a holy, righteous God. The Lord is going to do wonders among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on before the people. So they took up the Ark of the Covenant and they went before the people. The Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. And as for you, command the priests who bear the Ark of the Covenant, when you come to the brink of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan. And Joshua said to the people of Israel, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, here is how you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. God has told Joshua, here is my battle plan, folks. The priests are going to go out first with the Ark of the Covenant, and they are going to go and stand in the Jordan, and they will stand still. End of plan. Do you remember the issue with the Jordan at this time of year? It's rising. They are in flood stage. Okay, now, I don't know about you, but I grew up with a river in my backyard. Now, it wasn't a massive river like the Jordan. It was just a little bitty tributary of the Monongahela River that converges with the Allegheny to form the Ohio. It was just a little nothing. But the one thing they always told us, when it is rising, you don't get in it. Have you ever heard that? You know, have you been told that when you're driving along, if you can't see the road for the water, you don't cross it, you stay out of those places, you avoid them? Here, God is telling them the exact opposite. I have a question for you. Which one of you would like to have been the priest? Here, we're gonna have you responsible for the most holy relics that we have as a society. We are going to let you carry the seat of the Lord, and you need to lead us across a flooding James River. Which four of you are willing to do that for us? Yeah. We're talking serious business. Now, I am sure that a couple of the priests at least had the thought when Joshua said that, huh? You want what? Perhaps there were a few that were just a little bit more outspoken, a little more self-assured, a little more self-reliant, and thought, Joshua's gone nuts. But you see, God had to show up in a dynamic way. He was about to do something that had been prophesied for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was going to come to pass through them. There is a reason why God gave the plan to Joshua, and Joshua gave it to the priests who were supposed to be the leaders of the children of Israel. God calls us to different levels of accountability and authority, but we must hold close to Him and have total faith. Remember Joshua chapter 1? If you had to sum it up in just a few words, it would be, only be strong and very courageous. When we're told stuff like that, it's so easy for us to say, oh yes, I'm strong, I'll be courageous. We're always courageous when there's no adversary near us. We're big, we're tough, we're strong when everything is just fine. Here, for the first time since hearing those words again and again and again, they have the opportunity to show themselves as strong and very courageous. God is never caught off guard. In the wilderness, when the children of Israel was passing through, it was uncharted. They didn't know exactly where they were going, so God led them by a cloud during the day. Just what they needed. At night, it became dark. It was hard to see. It was almost like they were staggering blindly. So God provided them with fire and electricity in the clouds, a light to see by. When they began griping that, I'm so hungry, God gave them manna and then quail. They thirst, He led them by springs. You see, history is God's story. And God is about to write the next chapter in a way the Israelites couldn't even imagine. Nothing catches God by surprise. Verse 11, behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing over before you into the Jordan. Now, therefore, take 12 men of the tribes of Israel, from each tribe a man. And when the soles of the feet of the priests, bearing the ark of the Lord, The Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of the Jordan. The waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand in one heap. So when the people sat out from their tents to pass over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, as soon as those bearing the ark had come as far as the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the brink of the water. Now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest. The waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away, all the way at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan. And those flowing down toward the sea of the Arba, the salt sea, were completely cut off. And the people passed over the opposite to Jericho. Now the priests bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel was passing over on dry ground until all the nation finished passing over the Jordan. Only be strong and very courageous. Bethlehem Baptist Church, how do you like your challenges? Isn't that so true? And it doesn't matter what the challenge can be. We want a challenge that appears to be difficult, but in reality, is cake. You know, even our sport teams, we want a good game. We want to get to the Super Bowl, but we would really like for the score to be something like 47-0 at the end of the first quarter. Because then we can just kick back and enjoy it. We can rest, we can relax. We don't have to be nervous or anxious or scared out of our wits. We like pretend challenges. Something not that difficult. I challenge you to lift that candle holder. Well, I don't know if I can do it. That looks pretty tough. I did it. That's what we like. We don't mind a big challenge if we know it'll be taken care of, well, beforehand. You know what I mean? I'm sure the priests had all gathered themselves together and they had that conversation. Joshua told us we need to lead the people. We need to do it. Remember, there's sometimes bravery in numbers. You won't admit to your colleagues that you're scared to death. They won't admit to you that they're scared to death. So we get these phantom muscles. Sure, they had them on. Joshua said, we need to do it, guys. We're going to do this. We're going to march right across that flooded Jordan River, no problems. We can do it, we can do it, we can do it. All the while they're saying, oh God, let there be a drought tonight like we have never seen. Let there be a wind of 500 miles an hour blowing everything out so we can do this. And we don't show just how small and worried we are. And they got up and they got the Ark of the Covenant and they set out. And I could just see them coming closer and closer to the Jordan. And I know each one was saying, thank God everyone's 1,000 yards away from us. So they don't see the knees knocking and the arms trembling. And there's the river that they need to cross. And it is gushing. And you know the guys that are in the front, holding the very front end, the first ones to go in are thinking, this is it. Now, you know what the really neat thing is about God? God could have held that water up at any point that morning. He could have made it that everything was dried out by the time they rose and started to head out, but he didn't. Because it doesn't take faith to do the simple. It doesn't require a constant seeking of God's will and God's desire to do the easy. God is willing to do it. God is even more than willing to do it. God is ready to do it as soon as we comply and say, God, we're in this. Let's do it. I'm sure there was quite trepidation when those first priests took a step from the bank right there, going right into the water. I bet they expected, that cold, wet ickiness that'll chill you to the bone. And they went, and the crazy thing was, as their foot continued to go down, they never reached water. Because in that moment, God took care of it all. In fact, God had done it in such a way that he dammed the river about 12 miles north. So when the leaders showed some faith, when the leaders stepped out strong and courageous, those that followed didn't even see the obstacle. It was gone. Gone. Just like God did when they left Egypt. They'd heard the stories. They marveled at it. They probably questioned it some. Because you know how we are as humans. Well, Grandpa embellished the size of the fish. He really didn't catch one that big. It was that big, but it was the biggest of the day. So over the years, it grew. Maybe he just forgot how big it was and he thought it was that big. It is quite possible that they thought they were at the Red Sea. Now they've seen it for themselves again. Interestingly enough, God said to Joshua, I will be with you as I was with Moses. He almost reenacts the very scene of leaving Egypt as they come into the promised land. They're able to cross over on dry ground. The challenge has been handled. God did it. Now, Joshua did ask for each tribe to pick out one man. We're not told why. Just said, I want 12 men. Be prepared. We'll learn why next week. But here is something that only God could do, and he's done it. And it only happened because Joshua heard from God, and he relayed what he heard to his leadership. And the leadership was strong and courageous. They acted on what they knew. Was it easy? No, probably not. It's easy for me to sit back here today, 2,000 years, 3,000 years removed, and say, oh, that would have been simple. I mean, a little bit of water, what's the problem? But it was a huge obstacle, a huge challenge to get to where God called his people. It was the promised land. Church, not a whole lot's changed. God has placed this group of people up on a hill in North Chesterfield. And he has placed it here in order to lead people to the promised land. If it was for our comfort, he'd have just left us at home. I mean, I'm sure the people and the priests would have been just as happy before the 10-mile hike the day before. Oh, but Pastor, you don't understand society. I mean, yeah, I know. You say you get up and you go to work, but you get up and go to work and you come to church. You're surrounded by people who understand who God is and what He's done. And we're all of one accord. Yeah, we might not agree on everything, but I mean, we all know God. We all love God. We know what Jesus has done for us. Yours is easy. Out there in the real world, Pastor, there are people that don't believe the Bible's God's Word. Now that's a huge challenge. How do I start conversations? Oh, that ain't nothing. There are people that actually make fun of me for talking about God. You don't have that problem, Pastor. You see, every day, every age has their own challenges. They had the Jordan. We have mindsets and worldviews. They don't believe exactly like we do. Well, then give them a reason to believe. Let them see it by your life, by your thoughts, by your words, by your actions. Oh, but you don't know what you're asking. That's scary. They might think I'm crazy. They thought Joshua was crazy. In fact, as we go along, you'll see they think he's even crazier later on in the book. God wants to do a work with us, through us, and for us. But it requires that we be strong and very courageous and willing to step out on faith. In my I don't even want to tell you how much, my 45 plus years on this planet, seldom does God show up and remove all obstacles before I think of doing what He wants. But as I get busy doing what He has called me to do, it's amazing how many obstacles go by the wayside. He requires us to start. Did you get that? He requires us to start. God does not operate like the zoning commission. You know zoning commissions? I want to put up a house. Okay, can I see 5,000 copies of blueprints? They want to know what's going to happen every step of the way before you start. God's not like that. God just says, start. God says, more realistically, jump. I got you. See, that's a beautiful image because I can remember way long ago when I had little ones. We had one, and I won't call either of them out so you can just question. We had one that was a little more adventurous. Had no problem climbing as high as he could, and then, Daddy! So back at couches and just jump. Had the same understanding with swimming pools. Oh, look, there's water, jump. Does he know how to swim? Never occurred to him. Doesn't matter, jump. And everything is fine when there's a loving, caring caregiver there. And they jump and they get swooped up, and it is great fun. You see, God's that caregiver. And He's calling us, He's beckoning us. Jump. Listen to me and jump. Let's do something amazing. Let's do something so out of the ordinary that folks will say, wow. God wants to do that. He wants to see a movement in this day that we haven't seen for hundreds of years. But it requires us taking that first step, bending our knees, and lift off. Strong and courageous. If God has called you to it, He will see you through it. Bethlehem, let us reach out and do amazing things. Things that people wouldn't believe if it hadn't happened in their age. You see, there are folks just outside of us that want to believe in something so badly. They want to believe, and honestly, they're believing anything that comes down the street. But so many times it's all the wrong stuff. It's not because it's true, it's just because someone was bold enough to share it. And here we are, gathered as an assembly, as a body, as a group that has the most life-changing news ever to provide a hope and a security and a peace, and we're standing at the edge of the riverbank saying, I might get wet. And we can deliver them from all of that. Only be strong and very courageous. As our musicians come, I ask you, have you consecrated yourself? Have you prepared yourself to experience what God wants to do? If not, it's simple. In the old time vernacular was just sit down and have a little chat with Jesus. Look to Him, ask Him, where do you want me, God, and what do you want me to do? He won't lead you astray, and then be bold and strong to launch out into it. The decision is yours. But our world cannot continue on the status quo. As the musicians play, I ask that you stand. Let us sing, and let's sing like we mean it.
I have decided to